Hello everybody, my name is Maren. I'm a master's student here at LSE, and today I will be presenting a paper that I'm currently working on with Professor Ludwig. And yeah, I'm happy to take any suggestions afterwards, maybe after the session, since the time is quite short. To start off, so there's a large consensus that we need to cut emissions in order to limit global warming. But the pathway of how to get there and which policy mix actually to employ in order to cost effectively cut emissions is very much contested. So a lot of countries have implemented carbon presence strategies, so either a tax or an emission trading scheme to price carbon dioxide emissions. So, for instance, last year, 23% of global greenhouse gas emissions were covered by such a scheme. But there's also a lot of countries that are reluctant to actually implement such policies, mainly because they are afraid that it will, could decrease economic output in their country. So that's why it's interesting to study how costly actually carbon pricing is. And there has been quite some literature on or previous research on carbon pricing. Mostly this has been focused on the environmental impact on carbon pricing, so how effective carbon pricing is in terms of cutting emissions. There have also been a few studies with a more economic focus, which predominantly have been ex-ante studies using integrated assessment models or general equilibrium models. And then there have been a few empirical studies using ex-post evaluations, for instance, from Metcalf, who looked at the carbon tax in British Columbia and found there that the tax had no significant effect on employment and the economy, or from Kansas, who looked at the emission trading scheme in Europe. And they found that there is a temporary drag on the economy. So these studies so far have been quite country and region specific. And we want to, with this paper, extend the literature and look more at the overall impact of carbon pricing, and aim to answer the question what impact the implementation of the carbon pricing scheme has on economic growth and unemployment, and then in the next step also what impact actually the price level itself has. So if the effect differs for a higher price. So in this paper, we begin with a case study of Finland, which was the first country to implement a carbon pricing scheme, namely a carbon tax in 1990. The country, there was a drag on the economy in the years following 1990, but this could have also been in Finland due to the global economic recessions. So that's why we don't refer to Finland also. We then extend this case study looking at all countries that have implemented a carbon price until 2016, and use the synthetic control approach with staggered adoption to look at what the average treatment effect is, the average effect of implementing a carbon pricing scheme on GDP growth and unemployment. And then once further, we investigate how the heterogeneity in the carbon price is related to heterogeneity in the treatment effect over time and across countries. This talk, since it's only 50 minutes, is going to focus on the panel results. So the main results that we find are that the implementation of a carbon pricing policy decreases per capita GDP growth by 1.7% per year. But it does not have a significant effect on unemployment, and this is also in line with what others have found. And additionally, we do not find that there is a relationship between the level of carbon price and the growth effect. So to conduct this analysis, we are very thankful to have gotten data from Rafati, Dolphin, and Fetis on annual information on carbon prices, which are country specific, and they're adjusted for emissions coverage such that the carbon prices are comparable across time and across countries. So our panel of countries, or our panel consists of 33 countries that implemented a carbon pricing policy, up until 2016, and then 89 countries that did not implement such a policy during that time. And then, added to that, we also collect data on GDP per capita, on unemployment, on the investment rate, trade openness, and on inflation. So, in order to analyze what impact there is on the extensive margin, so the impact of the introduction of a carbon pricing scheme on GDP growth and unemployment, which are the two outcome variables of interest for us, we employ a counterfactual analysis using the generalized synthetic control approach proposed by Xu with a matrix completion method. And this approach admits that there can be multiple units that are treated, so multiple countries that are treated, and staggered adoption. And this is in particular interesting in our case, since countries implemented carbon pricing schemes at different points in time. The generalized synthetic control approach model uses an interactive fixed effects model, where our outcome variable is modeled as a function of the treatment status of covariates, so our set of the three covariates of unobserved factors, which control for unobserved heterogeneity, and of country and time-based effects. And the main parameter of interest is then the lambda, which shows the treatment effects, so the effect of the introduction of a carbon pricing scheme on the outcome variable from where we derive the average treatment effect. So the parameters are estimated using the matrix completion method, and this method also regularizes the unobserved factors. I'm happy to talk more about the methodology, but the time is constrained. I'm sure to talk more about it later on. Oh, sorry. So added on that, we also have a look at the heterogeneity in the estimated average estimated treatment effects, or the estimated lambdas, and how they relate to the heterogeneity in the carbon price. And for that, we use different panel models in order to test whether the introduction and the price effects are poolable. So we model it as a linear combination of an introduction and a price effect. And then we test using different panel models whether these effects are poolable. The main underlying assumption here that the carbon price must be set exogenous. So on to the results. Looking at the effect, first of all, on the extensive margin. So this employs the generalized synthetic control approach. We find that on average, the introduction of a carbon pricing scheme overall, so this is tax and ETS together, leads to a significant decrease in GDP growth by 1.7% among the treated countries. We also split up our analysis for the tax schemes and for the emission trading schemes separately. And we find that the tax schemes do not have a significant effect on GDP growth, while the emission trading schemes do. So this is also in line with previous literature. Then looking at the unemployment variable, we see that there is no significant effect of carbon pricing on unemployment in all three categories. So this now is a plot of the average treatment effects over time. So 0 year is the year that a country implemented a carbon pricing strategy. So this then corresponds to different years in different countries. And we see that in the short and medium runs, there seems to be a significant effect, as we also saw in the average treatment effect, a significant negative effect of the carbon pricing scheme on GDP growth. However, this effect seems to wear off in the long run. Sadly, we do not have countries that have implemented a pricing scheme for much longer than this period. So after that, we kind of wanted to see where there is heterogeneity in the treatment effects that we found. So when plotting the average treatment effect per country against their mean or the average carbon price, which is adjusted for emission coverage, we see that there's no direct clear relationship between the price that a country sets and the drag on the economy that the country experiences. Maybe also to add here, the light blue lines are the 95% confidence intervals.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, we don't ask this.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to take the question.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, then we wanted to have a look at this more formally, studying the intensive margin. So now using different panel models. For GDP growth, we find that the carbon price coefficient is poolable, so the poolability is not rejected. While the fixed effect is not poolable. So from that we can conclude that this indicates that the introduction effect differs across country, while the price effect seems to be roughly the same for the countries. And when we estimate this using a fixed effects panel model, we find that the price effect is insignificant. So there does not seem to be a relationship between the drag and the economy that a country experiences and the level of the price that it sets. For unemployment, we do the same poolability tests for the price coefficient and for the fixed effect, and we reject growth at the 5% level. So the introduction of the price effect seemed to be country specific. So on to the conclusion. So this paper looks at the economic impact of carbon pricing. And first in the paper, we start with the case study in Finland, which unfortunately I did not have time today to cover as well. So with the case study in Finland, we use a time series approach and also the generalized synthetic control approach. And using these two approaches separately, we find in both cases that the growth in GDP decreased significantly in the first 3 years after implementing the carbon price. So for Finland, then the critical assumption is that in the absence of the policy, the country would have continued on the same growth path as the other, as its control countries. Then to look on the more general effect of carbon pricing on the economic situation of a country, we extend this analysis to a panel of 33 countries and estimate the average treatment effect among these countries on GDP growth and unemployment. And there we find that that an implementation of carbon price leads to a reduction in GDP growth of 1.7%. But that the implementation does not lead to a significant effect on unemployment. Also, there seems to be no significant effect on the intensive margin, at least to the extent that we can study it. So to the extent, that countries have influenced it. To the extent that countries have implemented the carbon prices. So obviously, there just not a lot of countries have that implemented very, very high carbon prices.